Hello and welcome to part 2 of my React Native Map series. In part 1, we discussed how to add markers to your app. We also discussed how to create a polygon of coordinates, and we discussed how to create custom callouts for your map. So part 2 will be a lot more interesting, I think. In part 2, we'll discuss how to get your current location, how to show it on the map, and we'll discuss how to animate your map as you click on different markers. And we will also create a little carousel at the bottom to show information about each marker. As you swipe through the carousel, the marker will be highlighted with the information. As you click on the marker, the carousel will actually go to the index of that marker. As you can see here, we have our map from part 1. I've added one thing that's different. I've added the show user location flag here. So this is set to true. This is all you need to do to show your current location on the map. So in this video, we're going to actually work with 3 new libraries. We're going to work with React Native geolocation to get your current location. We have to use this because as of, I think, 0.6 or 0.61, they took out the geolocation features of the React Native Maps library and they put it into a separate package. So we have to actually add this to our app. And then we're going to use the React Native permissions to handle our location permissions a little bit easier with iOS and Android. And we're going to use the React Native Snap Carousel package to create our carousel at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the current user location. Let's go to our geolocation package. And I've already installed this in the app. So you just do this here. And I want to actually use this in our map screen. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to copy this line and paste it into here. So now I want to create a new function. Let's do it down here. I'm going to call it locate current position. This function is going to be used to actually get our current location. So we use that same name up here, that same component, geolocation. So we say geolocation, and then we say dot get current position. So from this, we get back the position. So you can see here, position. So we can say position. Let's put this on a separate line. Position. Then we get a function back. So we want to say, first, I want to log the position so we can see it in our console. So I want to say console.log. This is going to be a position object, but I want to read it as a string. So I want to say JSON dot stringify. So stringify is how you actually view a string object or how you view an object as a string. So you could say stringify position, okay, and we'll log that. So before we can use this, we need to actually request permission for this. So let's go to the React Native permissions and you'll need to install this yourself with this line here. I've already done this and you need to follow the instructions here. Make sure that you add these to your info.plist. So add these 2 permissions here. I've already done that in my app. And for Android, make sure you add the access find location in your manifest. And you might want to add the course location too. Let's go back to our app here. And I want to create another function first. I want to call it request location permission. Okay. And this is going to be asynchronous. So we're going to say equals async. And we're going to have an arrow function here. We want to say request the location permission for both iOS and Android. But iOS and Android have different permissions. So we need to create a if statement to check for the platform to see whether we're using Android or iOS. So I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to add some components from the React Native permissions package. Import. And first, I'm going to add the request function. Request from React Native permissions. Okay, and I also want to add the permissions constant here. So permissions. So if you go to the permissions here, you can see that they have the same thing here. And we search for request. You can see that that's a function that takes in a permission. So let's go back to our app. So we also want to check the platform, right? So we need to add the platform constant to our React Native imports here. So we do platform. So let's go back down here, and we can check to see if it's Android or iOS by saying if platform.os equals, and then it's either iOS or Android. So you can see iOS or Android for our case. Okay, else we do something else here. Okay, so now we want to use the request function. So we say request, and then we name the permission. So we say permissions, make sure it's capital, dot iOS dot location when in use. And we can await this. So we can say var response equals await. And with the response, we want to check to see if it's been granted. So we say if response equals granted. So you can see there's a few different options here: blocked, denied, granted. We're just going to work with granted to keep this video kind of short. So granted. If it's granted, then we want to locate the user. So we can say this dot locate current position. Okay, and that's pretty easy. So let's go down here. And actually, let's log this just to see what it is. So we do console.log, and I'm going to say iPhone and response plus response. Okay, and let's go down here to our Android section, and we're going to do something very similar. We're going to say var response equals await request, and then we request the permissions dot Android and .access find location for Android. And then with the response, we do kind of the same thing here. So we just copy and paste this here. And we can just log this again if we want to. So copy and paste this. And we can say Android. And let's go up here. Now I want to add component did mount. So I want to say component did mount. And when the component first mounts, I want to call that method that we created with the permission. So we say this dot request location permission. And let's save. Let's see how this works. So let's look at our log here. We say iPhone granted, and then we got our coordinates here. Okay, so our console.log json.stringify is this here. Okay, so that's a good first step. We have our location as a string here. But now we want to actually center the map on the map to our current location when the map first loads. So let's go back to our locate current position here, and we want to call a method on our map called animate to region. The animate to region function animates the map to a certain location using a region. So in order to do that, we need a reference to our map. So let's go down here to our map view. We need to create a reference to this so we can call a method on the map view. So let's go down here and we use the ref attribute. This is something that you have to get used to with React Native if you don't do this a lot. So we want to say reference equals map, and this dot, I'm going to say underscore map just to be safe, and equals map. Okay, so now if we want to call a method on this map, then we just say this dot map or this dot underscore map. So let's go back up to our locate current position here. And we want to create a new region first. So we say let region equals, and then we add our region data here. So this is our initial region for our map view from part 1. Now I want to get rid of this, and I'm going to cut and paste that here. And I'm going to replace these two with our position. And if we look at our object here, it's not position.latitude, it's position.coords.latitude. So we say position.coords.latitude, and I'm going to put this here too, and change it to longitude. Okay, so this is our initial region that we'll have. And now we need to set a state for our component. So we can say this dot set state, and we can just call it initial position, and we can set it to region. Or if you want to, you can name it the same thing and just say this You can copy and paste this here, and you can just get rid of this if you want to. Okay, so now we are setting our initial position from the geolocation package. And if you want to, you can add some error checking. You can say comma error, create an alert if you want to. So we can say alert dot alert, and we can get the error from here, and we can say error dot message to alert the user of a message. That's if you want to. It's not really necessary. There's other options that you can put here too. So if you go to our geolocation package, so we have the return object, the error, and the options. So the options are timeout, maximum, and enable high accuracy. So I'm going to add these three to our app now. And I'm going to put a comma here, and the options go inside of a bracket. So I want to say enable high accuracy. And this is a Boolean, so I'm going to say true. And I'm going to create a timeout. So the timeout will be, say, 10 seconds, so 10,000. And then I'm going to say a maximum age to maybe 1,000 is good. And now we need to add that state to our region here. Instead of region in our map view, we have something called initial region. And I'm going to set that to the state. So this dot state dot initial position. Okay. So we can save this. You probably couldn't see it, but let's reload. And now let's go to playground. And now you can see that the map animated to our current location. So before it was more over here, but now the camera is here. That is a good first step for our position. If we look up here at our coordinates, I've added some images to this app that were not in part 1. I've added images of food, burger, pizza, soup, sushi, curry. They're in my image folder here. So let's go down here to our build. And now I want to create a carousel for our coordinates. In our carousel, I want to have a food name, and I want to have a food image. So as we swipe through the carousel, we can see our different coordinates. So there should be 5 cards in our carousel because we have 5 coordinates. So let's go to the docs for the carousel here. And you can kind of see how you can create many different effects with your carousel. We are going to go down here and import carousel. So let's go up here and import carousel. And I want to create the carousel right below our map. So it's not below our map, but it's on top of our map. So it's going to be a overlay on our map. I'm going to go down here to our map, and the first thing I'm going to do is, instead of having height 100%, I just want the map to fit the boundaries of our screen. So to do this, you do dot, 3 dots, and you say style sheet, and you say dot absolute fill. So dot absolute fill is the same as saying bottom, left, top, right equals 0. So you're fitting whatever this is to the boundaries of your screen. So absolute fill, and let's save. And as you can see, everything looks pretty much the same. So that's good. Now I want to create a new style. I want to create a container because we're going to have a map and a carousel inside of our container. So let's put a comma here. And for this, I'm going to say the same thing. So both of these are going to fill the entire screen, but using this allows you to create something like an overlay on your screen. We'll see how this works in our app in a second. So let's go back up here to our render function, and I'm going to create a new view here. And let's put that at the end. And I want to add our new style to the view. So I want to say style equals styles.container. Everything still looks the same. And now I want to add the carousel to our container here below the map. But keep in mind, it's not below the map, it's on top of the map. So I'm going to go back here to our docs, and I'm just going to copy and paste this to make it faster. So let's go down here. As you can see here, we have a reference to our carousel. So that would be this dot underscore carousel. And our data would be our coordinates. So it's this dot state dot coordinates. It should be the same thing as we have up here. Okay, so the render item is the item that you want to show as your item in your carousel. So let's go up here to our functions, and I want to create a new method. I'm going to name it render carousel item, and it's going to take in a item. So the item comes from the render item function here. So you can see up here, the render item, you get a item and an index. And we'll use both of these. Actually, we'll just use the item for our app. So we have the item here. So let's go back to our code. So we have item. And for this, we'll just return a view. And inside of our view, we'll have a text. So let's do text. And the text will be the item name. We just say item.name because the item will be of this type here. So it'll be this object. So we have name, lat long, and image. Okay, so we have our text. And now I want to create a image. So image, I want the source to be the item.image that we have in our object here for our coordinates. So source will equal item.image. And then we can just close this, copy this, and we'll put it inside of our render item. So the slider width will be the entire width of the screen in our case, because we want to slide across the entire screen. So to do this, I want to import a constant called dimensions, or sorry, not a constant, but like an interface called dimensions. So if we go down here, we could say dimensions dot get window, and then we want to get the width, so dot width. So this is a great way to get the width of your screen. So dimensions.getWindow.width. And now for our item width, this we can set manually. I just want it to be something kind of big, but not too big. So I want to say 300, I think is good. So let's save what we have so far and see how this looks. So as you can see, we have our images are okay and our name is okay, but our positioning is not good and our styling is not good. So I want to create a new style for our carousel. So there's a prop here called container custom style, and I want to create a new style. I'm going to call it styles dot let's just call it carousel. Let's go down here to our styles and let's create it. So we have carousel. So for the carousel, I want it to be at the bottom. There's an easy way to do that in your styles. You could say position absolute, and then we could say bottom 0. So this puts it at the bottom of the screen. So let's save. And now you can see it's at the bottom of the screen. And let's put a margin here. So I'm going to say margin bottom. Something like 48 might be good. Okay. So that's the first step. Now we need to create some styling for the actual items inside of the carousel. So let's go up here to our render item method that we have for our carousel. And now let's add in some styling. So let's put a style for our view here. So I'm going to say style dot, I'm just going to call these cards. These are not really cards, but I can't think of a better name now. So let's just call it card. So card container will be the name of it. Style equals styles dot card container. Okay, and I want to put a style for our text also. So I want to put the style here, and I'm going to call it title style. And I also want to put a style for the image. So I can say styles dot card image. Let's call this card title to be consistent title. Okay, and let's go down here to our styles and let's create our styling for that. So let's do card container. For our card container, we will have a background color. So I'm going to have a background color. I want to have it somewhat like black opaque, RGBA, and then 0, 0, 0, and I want to have it maybe 0.7 6. Okay. And I want to set the height to be a lot shorter than it is now. So let's say height maybe 200. And width, I want it to be the same as the item width up here. So I want to say 300. Okay, and let's save. So that's a little bit better. Okay, and now let's add some padding. So let's do padding like 24. Let's create a card image style. So we have card image. Let's set the card image to be height. Let's do 120. And width will be the same width as our item. So it'll be 300. So width will be 300. Let's save this. Okay, it's starting to look better. You can see that our carousel is slowly starting to look more pretty. So let's anchor the image at the bottom of the container. So let's say bottom 0 and position absolute. So it's the same as above. Save. Okay, so now it fits into our carousel here. That's a good start. So now I'm going to create a rounded edge for our cards here. So back up to our card container, I want to create a radius for our cards. So I'm going to say border radius 24, I think is good. So let's save. Okay, we're getting there. So you can see at the bottom here, the bottom is still flat. And the bottom is flat because the image is taking up the edge here. So let's round the bottom border of the image. That's pretty easy. We can just go down here to our card image style and say border bottom left radius and set it to the same as this above. So we do 24, border bottom right radius 24, and save. Okay, now that looks a lot better. So let's work on the title styling. Let's create one called card title. We want a white text, so we have color white. And I want the font size to be bigger. So let's do 22. And I want it to be centered in this card. So I want the align self to be center. Okay, and let's save. And ta-da, we have our title and our image here. So this looks pretty good. You can see that our carousel is centered and our text is centered and our image is aligned to the bottom here. So now the fun part comes with linking our carousel with our map. So currently when we click on our markers here, nothing happens with our carousel. But I want the carousel to go to the soup if we click on the soup, and go to our pizza if we click on the pizza. And I also want the map to animate to the marker that coincides with our carousel item if we move to that food. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this image here because we don't really need it. So let's go to our callout and I'm going to remove this. Okay, so now we don't have an image in our callout anymore. I'm going to remove this callout here and I'm going to put this image as an image source instead of our marker. So we have the image prop here. I'm going to just name that to this. So let's do this. So now we can get rid of this here. Let's save. So the easiest one to start with will be the carousel change. So let's go up to our functions and I want to create a new function. I'm going to call it on carousel, if I can spell carousel, item change. And this function is going to take in an index. The index will correspond to the index of the carousel. So I want to get the current location object from our array up here based on the index. Let location equals this dot state dot coordinates, and then ask for the location at this index. And then I want to say this dot, if you remember, we have access to our map, if I can find it, via our map ref here. So this dot map, and then there's a function called animate to region. So you won't see it in the autocomplete here for VS Code, which kind of sucks, but You just have to look up the map functions in the docs. So animate to region, and then we pass in the region here. So I'm going to copy and paste this stuff into here because we want to have the same deltas. But now for the latitude and longitude, I want to just use the location here and say location.latitude and location.longitude. So now let's go down to our carousel here, and there's a prop in here called onSnap2Item. So this takes in a index. So when you move to a different item, this index is our index, so it'll be 0 through 4 in our case. And then we call this dot on carousel item change, and we pass in the index. Let's save. So when it first loads, it won't actually do anything with that function because we're not changing it yet, but let's change it to pizza. And now you can see the map animated to this here, which is pizza. Let's change it again. You can see soup, and you can see sushi and curry. Okay, so that's the first step. And now we actually want to show the callout when we change the item. So to do that is actually pretty easy. Let's go back up here to our function. And after we animate to region, I want to say this.state.markers index. So let's create the state too. So let's do markers here. So I want to create marker state, and it'll just be a array index. And then we can say show callout. So this will be a array of markers. To set this array of markers, we need to go down to our loop here where we are creating the markers, and we want to create a reference in our marker component. Ref equals ref. We could say this.state.markers index equals ref. So this is a nice little trick to create an array of markers based on an array that you receive. So for example, you might have an array of locations that you get back from an API, and you want to store an array of markers as you populate the map here. That's exactly what we're doing. So we create the marker and we add that marker to the state array here. So we have this.state.markers index. So for the first one, it'll be 0. So this marker will be put into this array at the 0 index. Okay, hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, leave a comment and I will try to answer you as quickly as possible. Okay, so now we have an array of markers when the app first loads. When we change the index of our carousel, we animate to that marker and we show the callout of that marker using that index. So let's save. Index, missing index. Let's go down here. Oh yeah, so with your map function here, you get 2 different objects. You get the marker itself and you get the index. So I forgot to pass in the index here. Okay, so let's save. Let's go to our map here. And as you can see, there's something wrong when we reload our app. We don't see the carousel here. So there's a certain prop that you need to add to your carousel in order for it to show up right away. And it's not very obvious. So let's go down here to our carousel, and you need to add the remove clipped subviews. So let's set this to false because it's true by default. So let's save. And now let's reload. Go to playground. And now you can see it's here. It's one of those things that you just have to remember. So it kind of sucks that you need to add this, but don't forget it. If you don't see some overlay on your screen when you first load the map, that might be why. Okay, so now let's switch to a different item here. Let's go to pizza. And now you can see the callout showed. And if you go to soup, you can see that that one shows. And they also removed the callout from the previous one, which is nice. Okay, so we can go through these and we can see sushi and curry. You can have a lot of data in your callout. You can have a lot of data down here in your carousel. So the last thing I want to do is I want to navigate to a certain index in our carousel when we click on a marker. So when I click on curry, I want this to change to curry. So let's go back up here to our functions, and I'm going to create a new function. I'm going to name it on marker press, and I'm going to pass in two different things. I'm going to pass in a location and a index. So the index will be the index of the array up here in our coordinates. Let's create our function here, and we will first animate to the region when you press the marker, because right now it doesn't animate, it just stays still. So let's access our map again. So we have this dot underscore map dot animate to region. And I'm going to copy and paste this in because it's the exact same code. Okay, so we pass in the location and we animate to that location. So let's add this to our marker component. Below our ref, I want to use the onPress method. So onPress, we're not going to pass anything in here. And we want to say this dot on marker pressed. And we pass in the marker and the index. Okay, and we only have access to the marker and index because we're using this map method here. So let's save and see if this works. Let's click on pizza. And ta-da, you can see that the map moves as we click on different markers. That's very handy to have in any map-based app. Okay, so let's go back up to our method. We have access to our carousel ref through underscore carousel. And let's say this dot underscore carousel dot snap to item. So this is another function that you just need to memorize or look up. Snap to item. You can go to the carousel docs here and let's go, I think there's a documentation page here for it. Maybe, yeah, here. And we can say snap to item. Yeah, so these methods here. So it tells you here that in order to use these methods, snap to next, snap to previous, snap to item, you need to create a reference to your carousel. So it walks you through all that stuff here. Okay, let's go back to the app. So snap to item, and then we just pass in the index. So let's save. And now let's click on pizza, and it went to pizza. Let's go over to sushi, and it went to sushi, and to curry. Now we have this working, and we can also navigate like this too. So you can see this is very powerful stuff. You can create some really cool map-based applications using React Native Maps and geolocation. There's a few other things that I could do for this video, but I'm going to keep it short. You can navigate to the map marker when the app first loads. Like if I save here, you can see that it puts you on the current location first. You can have it locate to the burger marker first and show the call out if you want to, but I'm not doing that for this video. Okay, so that ends my video session on part 2 with React Native Maps. I might do a part 3, I'm not sure yet. This covers a lot of what you might do with maps. Everything else is just a little tweaking of animations and zooming and things like that. So everything else you do from here on out will be pretty easy. You can play around with the maps package and the geolocation package, and you can do a lot more things with it than what I'm showing you. But this is the basis for creating a very engaging map-based app. Yeah, I hope this all made sense. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And happy coding. Bye.